Hello, everyone, and welcome to the stream. This is Otaku Showboat. Today is Sunday, January 12th, 2020. Oh boy, so today is more Factorio. Of course, if you're watching the VOD on YouTube, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and if you are so inclined, head on over to twitch.tv/Otaku Showboat to leave a follow to be notified when I go live Sundays, Tuesdays, Thursdays from 10 a.m. to approximately 1 p.m. US Eastern Time. You can do all of the social stuff in the links in the description below, including supporting Pyanodon at patreon.com/Pyanodon, myself at patreon.com/Otaku Showboat, as well as visiting my Discord server for access to blueprints. You can do blueprint requests on my Discord, and I will provide them if I have them. Yeah. So let's play Factorio. Let's do that. I did a lot. I did a lot off screen. So let's actually just switch right on over to that. Let's begin immediately. Don't really have too much to talk about today outside of I actually cooked something today different than usual for my breakfast, and I am starting to transition away from being on quote keto slash very low carb dieting right now. I've decided I'm going to start incorporating more fruits and vegetables in particular into what I'm eating, and that's started off today with making a dish this morning for breakfast. It was scrambled eggs with cheese and onion and red bell pepper, as well as a couple of strips of bacon and a small one of those small mandarin oranges, and coffee, of course. Usually, I just have two fried eggs over hard with a couple strips of bacon and a couple of sausage patties. That's the normal breakfast. But no, today I took the extra effort and I scrambled my eggs. Good morning. Good morning. So I have 20 saves since the last stream. 20 saves since last stream. So I think I did a few things off screen. I think there's going to be a little bit to talk about going into today. Just a little bit for us to discuss. So let's see. Last time, I'm trying to remember. Last time we wrapped up with the creation of the sand castings. I'm pretty sure that that's what was done last time. I discussed Train Supply Manager and how that is being handled right now. Just discussed Train Supply Manager and went over and sort of built this for the sand castings station and supply. And I said that off screen I was going to go out and I was going to do the iron to unsimed iron processing. And yeah, I did a little bit more than that. I did just a little bit more than that. As I zoom out and show you the base. Here is the base as it currently stands. Uh, there's a little bit of pre-planning here for what we are going to be doing today. But I will mention what has been completed off screen. So, first off to talk about is coke. So there's this nice little coal patch right here that I have tapped into a lot. A, a, a bit. So each of these warehouses is a fully compressed yellow belt of throughput of stacked coal. So each of these is like 5 yellow belts worth. So each one is 75 per second of coal. Think of it that way. And there are 4 of these warehouses, as you might tell here. And it's all being converted 1-to-1 into coke. Each one is 60 high-pressure furnaces, converting 1-to-1 to coke. Why not do the better process of hot red coke processing? Because it's better and it gives you a lot more coke per unit coal, and it gives you a whole bunch of coal dust. It's also really complex. It's also a lot more buildings overall. A lot more logistics work. You have to deal with the coal dust in particular. You have to deal with the coke oven gas that gets produced out of that. I think there's there's a lot. There's a lot that you have to do. It takes a really long time to set that up. This is really easy and simple to set up. Just one thing that gets pasted many times. And it's 1-to-1, so I know exactly how much I'm getting out of this, and it's exactly to ratio. And if you've done red hot coke processing, you know that it's really difficult to get things to ratio there. So anyway, I have, let's see, 4 fully compressed, well, ish. It's 4 yellow belts of stacked coke, aka 20 yellow belts equivalent of coke, aka 300 per second of coke supply here. Up to 300 per second of coke supply. Right next door, we've got glass. This is actually a more recent addition. With the glass, we've got, again, the single 15 per second yellow belt of stacked quartz, aka 5 yellow belts worth, being processed into, I think it's supposed to be 30 per second of glass through this particular process, going up to powdered quartz from crushed. But the limit here is this. This is what's limiting it to be under 30. You can see that this line right here is not fully compressed. That's because there is a bottleneck right here that I have to fix. There's also a bit of a bottleneck right here, and right here in the production of the pure sand. So this actually takes like 75 per second of pure sand as well to do this processing. And yeah, I took the sand castings setup, blueprinted it, and just tacked on an extra washer on the end to make it into pure sand, because it is 1-to-1 sand into pure sand. It produces a little bit less overall pure sand, so it needed to be expanded a little bit more to make sure that I produced 75 per second in total. If I can find my coffee. And it produces more tailings, and yes, I can take my tailings and I can process my tailings. Speaking of processing my tailings, this now exists. Say hello to tailings into Nexlet. Up to 10 per second of Nexlet plates, as long as the tailings are being brought in. I mean, what I could also do is take the excess sand and void it. I could void the excess sand. I'll note that I have figured out why. The stacked Pyanodon's products are not able to be voided, and it's actually really simple as to why. It's because the mod loads after the pie suite. It's really simple. It loads after the pie suite so that it can know what the recipes are to add stacking to. I mean, it makes complete sense, but if it loads after, then it's not getting processed by the Pyanodon script that adds all of the voiding recipes either. So basically what I'm saying is I need to add a separate I need to like add the voiding script to the mod that does the conversion for the stacking, that adds the stacking. It needs to also add the voiding script again, like a copy paste of the voiding script into the mod that does the stacking, uh, just so that it would be able to actually void the stacked products. Which, yeah, so that explains that. Why I can't void stacked gravel, but I can void stacked. I can void the stacked stone because Deadlock's stacking does load before Pyanodons. Deadlock stacking does not depend on Pyanodons, and therefore it gets loaded first, and it adds those stacking recipes before Pyanodons loads. So after Pyanodons loads, and the script is run to add the voiding recipes, all of the stacked recipes from Deadlocks gets added to it. But anything that's added through the Deadlocks 4 slash the Deadlocks 5 Pyanodons mods, which is the mod I'm using to add the stacking for the Pyanodons intermediates, that particular mod depends on the pie suite, and therefore gets loaded after the pie suite, so those don't get voiding. It's really, really, really sad. It's really sad that that is the case, and I'll have to try to fix it. Anyway, lead. Now mining lead and getting silver out of it. And I have this neat little setup here. So remember how I'm mining coke? I'm producing lots of coke. This is using one of those fully stacked belts of the 5x compressed coke. So this little number here is using 75 per second of coke. Yay! When it's doing its thing fully, it's not, because I'm not actually using all of the lead and the silver that's being produced out of all of this. But that's the point. Is this will use up to 5 yellow belts of coke to make precisely 750. 750? I'm pretty sure 750 units of acetylene per second. That is a lot of acetylene, because this is a lot of lead. This is 5 yellow belts of lead being stacked to produce 1 stacked belt of lead out. Yeah, this is a bit more belt than I need for this, but yeah, so it's 5 yellow belts of lead that is being processed here. This setup is lead processing through lead dust, and it's making lots of things. Just simple as it's making lots of things. It's a bit over a yellow belt. It's like a belt and a half of the lead plates, which is really sad, by the way. It's like, oh, it's like a belt and a half of plates, and it's just under 1.5 per second units of silver. Like, oh yeah, 75 units of lead. It makes 1.5 silver with about a belt and a half of lead plate with it, splitting between the two. Granted, this could make like 3-ish. I forget exactly how much. If it's all being converted into silver, it can do like 2.5-ish belts, yellow belts of plates if it was only doing plates. Um, so it's decent. It's just this ratio of ore into silver is really bad at this phase. And that's where most of the lead is going, basically, as it's going into the silver. Uh, Granted, I won't need a ton of silver. Silver primarily will go into a combination of solder and into what I need for the circuit 2s. Silver is used somewhere in circuit 2s, if I'm not mistaken. Silver plates. This is used for glass cores. And for solder, which is directly needed for circuit 2s. Also, a whole bunch of modules. I need to note again that this playthrough does use Bob's modules. So it's going to be rather important to make as many circuit 2s as I possibly can, because the modules are going to eat circuit 2s. It'll be eating them for all the meals. As many circuit 2s as I can throw at him will be going into those modules, and that will change literally everything. By the way, that will change literally everything, because it'll vastly reduce the number of buildings that I need, while also vastly increasing the amount of throughput that I'll need. Speaking of which, I've got tar down here. I've tapped into this tar. Lots of tar pits. And it's producing tar. That tar is being used for the glass. It is being used up here at the glass, making the 750 units of coal gas that is required to process the glass out here, and that is going into a little depot section. I've got separated depots here to take care of the tar into coal gas, and then the loading and holding of the glass in the yard. This will request coke as well. Speaking of which, I will note that I have changed how I'm handling the requests at the requester stations. Even this is not quite what I'm using right now. What I'm using right now, if I can find the Nextlit Mall request, what I'm using now is 2 arithmetic combinators to define how many train loads of product of whatever material that I want, that I'm requesting, how many train loads I want to hold in my buffer. So that is what these 2 combinators are ultimately doing. So I have wired up the buffers. In this case, I have wired both the bulk unloaders and the passive provider chests, because that's what the material's holding once a train unloads. That's what I'm interested in, is the total amount being held. I have set it to take that input signal, divide by the amount of material that the train holds in total for Nextlit. In this case, Nextlit stacks to a stack size of 300, and I have set the train wagons to hold 4 stacks per wagon, so 16 stacks of 300 is what the input signal will be divided by and then it will output that value as the variable x. It's just a random symbol x. I could tell it to output the nextlet symbol again, but by outputting x, it makes this setup more resource agnostic, so I can blueprint this, which I have done at this point. By outputting x and then going into the next combinator to take the input of x, in this second arithmetic combinator, I say, take the value of whatever number of trains I want to hold in this particular station. How much of a buffer do I want? For this case, I want 2 train loads worth of buffer before I want another train sent. Or let's actually word that correctly. I want to maintain at least 2 train loads here, or at most 2 train loads, I should say. If I fall below 2 train loads worth of buffer in this station, send me another train. That's the logic, is if I have less than 2 train loads, send me more train loads. So here, in this case, I've got 10 trains worth currently sitting in here of nextlet. I do a value of 2 minus that value of x, which in this case is 10, so it's outputting a different variable p equal to -8. And then on the train requester, it's just saying number of trains on the way is less than the value of p. So this will activate, it'll turn on if the number of trains that's on its way is less than the value of p. So if p is positive, and if trains on the way is 0, 0 is less than p, which will be, ideally, a value of 1 or 2, etc. And then it will send the trains. It will send the trains up to the 2 train loads that I want. So, and then once it's done, it'll be done. I've also found a glitch with TSM. There is a glitch with Train Supply Manager that is rather important. The train requester is based off of names. So if I actually go up here and have an actual look at this requester, we see trains on the way, signal less than p. 2 is the number I want, minus p. This is saying that it applies to the mall nextlet request. If I change the name of this station, everything will break. Everything will break, because suddenly this mall nextlet request, it doesn't go away automatically. It stays there. And this requester is going to be requesting for this station that doesn't exist of mall nextlet request. And it can get really bad. It can get really bad to the point where your new name on your station is going to be constantly requesting trains, even though everything else looks to be set up correctly. If you have changed your station name after assigning the priority request here, the train request, if you change this name afterwards, this is not going to work anymore. It's going to constantly request the plates here. It would constantly be requesting the nextlet plates, and the trains would constantly be coming in non-stop, even when the lamp is off. That drove me nuts until I finally figured out what the problem was. And the way that you solve it is just basically tear it down and build it back again, and do the naming properly first, and then assign the the depot that you want to pull from. So that was a lot. It's not everything. It's not even everything because, well, I haven't actually showed the iron yet. Showed the lead, showed the tar, showed the glass, showed the coke. Here's the borax, etc. that I think I had done 4 last time, and the sand castings that we finished with last time. Niobium now has a station with salt input, as well as the niobium filling the train out here. Salt now has an input all the way, way up here. Got lots of salt. Each salt mine is 10 per second. Yeah, TSM requester stations are the hardest part of it in total. It's pretty easy to set up a regular station going into a yard. You have to remember to define that yard. You have to remember to define the yard as well, but that's the hardest part of setting up the yard. The hardest part of defining the requester is you have to do stuff like this, or something a little bit more simple like this, because you can just take a decider combinator and say, hey, whatever the amount that I have of buffer, just take that in and then say, hey, I want a very specific amount, and set a value of whatever, p in this case, to be equal to 1 if I have below a specific amount of buffer. And then have the number of have the thing still set to p, set to the train on the way is less than p, and it will send a train every time it falls below the buffer. So in this case, if the amount of copper plates is less than 48,000, right now it's 84,000, as all of the chests have been wired up. If it ever falls below 48,000, it'll output a value of p equal to 1. And the number of trains on the way, if it's 0, like it is, if p is equal to 1, well, 0 is less than p, this will turn on, and it will request a train. Hey, it's a fairly simple concept, that. But, of course, I'm doing it a little bit more complex up here now, because this just allows me to define train loads rather than specific values. This is for defining specific values that I want to hold on to. This is for defining how many train loads I want to hold on to. It's not that you need a specific train setup for each ID in the system. It's you need a specific yard for a specific product. And then you assign the trains to the yard. Trains are assigned to yards, where in this case I call them depots. A train needs a depot assigned to it. The depot can have as many stations as you like. So as a good example, over here, we'll look at the iron, because I haven't looked at the iron yet. This is unslimed iron processing of 5 yellow belts of iron equivalent being brought in. It's crushed into processed, screened into grade 1, 2, and 3. The 2 and 3 get converted into 1 again, and then the 1 goes into dust, iron ore dust that gets processed into unslimed iron and all of that good stuff. It gets processed into iron slime and iron pulp 1, and then that gets converted into unslimed iron, and then that gets converted into molten. And from there, the molten goes into steel. I have a lot of coke coming in for the steel as well. But over here, I have my yard. It's just where the trains go to live until they are requested. Yards are where trains go until they're requested. Each train goes to a normal train station to supply, and then goes to the depot. That is all you need to manually set, is fill up at your supply and then go to the depot, whatever depot you want. Note that these all are named Iron Depot 1. These 3 are named Iron Depot 1. Same name. You go into the define supply sourcing priorities, and then you, in this case, that they hold stacked iron at that depot. It's just you are defining the resource of stacked iron with an ID, in this case, the same ID as the resource of stacked iron, and then adding the station, the supply station, these are supplier train stops, of Iron Depot 1. And all 3 of these are named Iron Depot 1, and it will pull from these 3 supplier stations. All 3 of these trains will go back to the iron supply after they have been emptied at a requester station. They'll go back to supply at the supply station here, the regular train station, Iron Supply 1, and then they'll go back to the yard until they get requested again. And then what you define at the requester station is just the whatever arbitrary resource and ID that you have assigned to the station for the yard. These are actually just arbitrary. It's just a resource with a ID, or just 2 random values, and then a station to go with it. In this case, the depot, which is the yard where they sit at. And this is actually going to be 4 separate depots. For reference, 4 separate yards here. 1 for iron, 1 for steel, 1 for stainless steel, 1 for super steel. And you can see that this list will grow very long as you're supplying more things onto your quote-unquote network of stuff. One thing to note is that Train Supply Manager is inherently dumb, in that it does not actually know what your trains are carrying at any given moment in time. That, I think LTN does know what your trains are carrying. Train Supply Manager does not know what your trains are carrying. It is agnostic to what the trains are actually carrying. All it does is control when to send trains to a requester station from a supply depot. And you can prioritize what depots you pull from. If you have multiple depots with the same item spread across your map, You can request from the closest depot and then secondarily request from one that's further away if the one that's closer to you doesn't have a train it can immediately send to you at that requester station. That is really what Train Supply Manager is good at doing. And because it is dumb to exactly what your trains are carrying, it is not as UPS intensive. It is very light on the UPS counts. Anyway, all of that gone through. Just showing the iron here and the steel, and this of course gets processed into lots of plates of both iron and steel. This setup, you may look at this and be like, what the hell is up with that? At this huge station that's been brought up from way down here. It's like, why is that so large? Because I will eventually be doing stainless steel and super steel at this location. I may also be doing high-grade iron processing. All of that is going to require a lot of outside inputs. So this is my requesting area for those outside inputs. So I need to make sure that I have the spacing required to send out all of the things that I am requesting. So this is just spacing to make sure that I have the space to offload what I need for those processes. Now, the point of today is to do zinc and nickel. What train stop is at the depot? The supply depots use supplier train stops. So your supply depots in your yards, those are the supplier train stops. The ones at your filling stations, these are regular train stops. These are vanilla standard train stops. At your actual supply stations, your supply depots use the supplier train stops. And then, of course, wherever you are requesting, those will use requester train stops. That being said, you can use supplier train stops at your actual resource supply stations, and you can configure it to wait until it's filled and have it sit here as a supplier station and use this as your depot. It's not recommended, but it can be done. Just as a point of reference. Remember that the point of the mod is so that you are able to have this buffer of trains. I mean, that's basically what it is. It is a buffer of trains, is the point of having a separate yard. So that you can have many trains going out and doing stuff at any one time.